Widgets and software. Most people don't realize that software is one of the most powerful traffic generation methods on the entire internet. We've already been talking about content, and it's critical for any business to be using a lot of good quality content to generate a lot of traffic to any website and to bring in new customers and prospects for any business that's trying to market online. But what we haven't covered too much up until now is software. And it's important to know all the possibilities when it comes to using software to generate traffic, because software is responsible for generating billions and billions and billions of visitors to all kinds of sites all over the internet. If you look at the top 500 or so websites by traffic in the entire world, we kind of already went over the fact that a lot of them have in common that they have many, many pages of content and that they have good content. But what we didn't go over in detail was the fact that the ones that don't have all that content typically have something else, and that's they utilize software to generate their traffic and to generate the exposure for whatever it is they do online. Great example of this are the social networks. Facebook, MySpace, Bebo, a lot of these sites that we've already been talking about during this entire course. Those sites are all basically software. They're web services. They're web-based applications, but they're software. There's a lot of other software out there that has been responsible for generating billions and billions of hits, page views, and user signups, such as communications tools like Skype, ICQ, Yahoo Messenger, and all those other programs like that that help users communicate with each other on the internet. Those are software. Some of them are web-based. Some of our apps you actually download and install into your computer. But there are many other types of software as well that can drive traffic to a website or just to get people to come and use it. If you've seen StumbleUpon, which we've already been talking about, their whole service is toolbar-based, where you install a toolbar and then you can surf around the internet, vote on sites that you like, so on and so forth, through the toolbar, and it kind of tracks where you go and which sites you're voting on. Well, that toolbar is very viral, and they have things built into it where it can bring in your friends and other people, and that's what helps their service grow. You may have heard of the Alexa toolbar that many people had installed at one time and still do. Google's toolbar is probably one of the most popular ones, where you can search right from the toolbar and a little bit of search space on the side. Many browsers now actually come with this installed. We've got the world of widgets, which are now these little pieces of software that you can actually put on a web page, and the software runs in a little spot within the web page, but that software may be powered by some other computer out there on the internet. A great example of this widget is like Twitter. And by the way, Twitter is another piece of software on the internet that's generating lots and lots of traffic, and that's what runs that business. It's a software program. It's a communications tool that's mostly web-based, and that's how that's reaching millions and millions of people. But there's a widget for Twitter that you can put on a web page, and so when you actually make Twitter posts and Twitter entries, if you have the little Twitter widget, let's say, on the side of your blog, it'll automatically show the latest Twitter post that you've made right there on your blog. So if someone's visiting your blog, they can see in this little box what your latest Twitter post was. They also have widgets for like Flickr, the photo hosting service. So if you post photos to your blog, if you post photos to your Flickr account, they can show up in a certain area in your blog, like it'll say like the latest photos added to Flickr. So those are widgets, and there are all kinds of other widgets. We've actually developed one called BlogRush now that you've heard about, and that's just pulling content from other blogs to be shown on someone else's blog. So one blog can load this little box, and it'll actually show links to headlines from other blogs all over the internet, as we've already talked about. So widgets, that's another type of software. And in a moment, I'm going to go over several other types of software that you probably haven't even thought about. But the point is, there's all kinds of software that can be created that can help you generate traffic to your business, bring in new prospects, bring in new customers, and can help you grow your sales. There are just a number of different opportunities for you to think about and for you to try to kind of come up with a good plan to actually create some software that would be great for your market. And with that in thinking about that, you need to realize that almost every niche has this opportunity. So kind of one of the action steps that you need to take is kind of do your homework and do a little bit of research and start thinking about what types of software applications or web services or widgets or anything else that we're going to talk about in the CD, which ones might apply to your market. What can you think about that your market might be able to use? Almost every niche could use some type of software, whether it's some kind of updated news widget or updated information widget that's related to content, news, and announcements for that market. Or if you sell a certain type of solution and in your market, or at least for your customers, they're making some kind of progress, there's a need or at least an opportunity to create some kind of software that would be kind of a progress tracker of sorts. For example, if you're in the health and fitness market and you're teaching people how to put on muscle mass or to lose weight, I guess weight loss is probably the easiest example. So let's say you're just mainly selling information or selling products and supplements related to weight loss. Well, you could provide this free weight loss tracking service to your customers or to anyone where they could create an account and they could log in, and it could be just like an online diary where they could record their latest comments, about what they've been eating and how it's been going and how they feel, and also put in how much they weigh on any given date that they're making that entry. And the simple type of piece of software web service could simply track their progress. So they could look at it over time, and maybe this little service would just draw a nice little line graph or chart showing the progress that they're making based on the data that they're entering. This is a very basic example, but this could be applied to almost any market where a business is involved with some kind of progress, whether it's weight loss, whether it's making money, whether it's reducing someone's debt, so they're tracking how much debt they have left. It could just be any number of things. So, it could be gardening as well. Like we've been using this gardening example. It could be, how many full tomatoes you've grown this season, or, how big your garden's getting, so on and so forth. But that's just a quick example. So anything where progress is being made, there's almost an opportunity to create some kind of web-based tracking service to either sell or even just give. Most of what we're talking about here with web traffic generation is just creating things that people just use for free that can drive us traffic and bring us leads as a part of us giving that away. But there's also, of course, always the opportunity to sell access to such software or web service. And, you want to think about that as well. But for the most part, we're just talking about doing this for free to generate traffic. So that's what you need to think about in your business. After you poke around and learn about all these different types of software, the examples I'm going to give you on the CD, you need to kind of look around the internet, check some of them out, and start thinking about what could I do specifically for my market. In a lot of markets, another great example is any kind of media hosting, such for example, like photo albums. If you're doing something, let's say in the dog market, whether it's dog sweaters or dog beds or dog training or anything of that sort, you could create some kind of free photo album service to host photos of your customers' dogs. Or if you do something in the parenting niche or something for children, it could be posting photos of your kids. If you're in the hobby market and it's designing and building model rockets, it could be some kind of photo hosting service / community where people can show off what they've built and and brag about and comment on the other photos that your other users are posting on your service. And of course, in the gardening niche, you could have people just post photos of their gardens and also post photos of kind of how-to processes that they're doing. In other words, when they're going to plant some new seeds, maybe someone's going to take 5 photos of the entire process, showing them digging the hole, putting in the seeds, putting the topsoil back over it, watering it, adding fertilizer. So as you can realize, there are just a number of different opportunities for you and so many different ideas that you can run with to create some kind of software. So start thinking about and keeping an open mind about different ideas that you can do for your business because they're all over the place. The great thing about software as a traffic generation tool is that it can be designed to be incredibly viral. Most of the very, very popular internet services on the internet in the top 500, that are software based are typically incredibly viral. Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, Skype, all these things have that in common. They're viral. And many of those things involve people's friends. And that's how they become viral, because they all have the here, invite your friends to come use the service with you element into the software itself, and that's what helps it grow. Many of them became huge, even multi-billion-dollar companies, with almost not using any advertising at all. They just rely upon the viral nature of the service, and that pretty much does all the marketing for them. You know, Facebook, I don't think, spent a lot of money on advertising. They just got a core group of users using the service, and then they opened it up to more and more users, and then those users told their friends, and so on and so forth. So you'll want to keep that in mind too. You always want to be thinking, how can I make this viral? How can I give people an incentive to tell their friends about this? Is it, I'll develop this software, this service, so it's better off if they have their friends involved with them? Because that's what all the communications types of tools do. You know, Twitter is better if you have your friends on Twitter. Facebook is better if you have your friends there with you. You know, Skype is better if you actually have someone that you can call and talk to. You know, it's making phone calls over the internet for free. Obviously, Skype is probably one of the best examples of a viral piece of software or service used for the internet ever. I think it grew faster than any other project ever put on the entire internet. And it's kind of obvious if you think about it why that happened. It's not because they had a huge marketing budget. It's because the entire service worked around people bringing in other people to the service for them. Because the way it works is you download the software, you install it on your computer, and then you make phone calls for free using like a headset and a microphone through your computer and your internet access. But in order to talk to people, like to have friends to talk to for free or family members to talk to free using it, they have to have the software installed also. So as you can imagine, that's how it grew virally. Somebody would learn about it, they'd install it, and then they'd tell a bunch of people they knew that they wanted to talk to for free on it about the software, and that's how it grew. But think about how you can make yours viral, because almost everything can be made viral. Any of these widgets that show up on other people's sites that pull data from your server or from your service, if you ever do something widget-based, you know, can have a little link on there that says, you know, click here to add this for free to your site. You know, that's certainly what we did with BlogRush. We had that enabled into our widget where at the very bottom it says, click here to add your blog post for free. And so every time that widget loads, every time someone sees it, they're also exposed to essentially a little advertisement for the widget itself. And that's why, of course, we get tons of new users every single day, and it just grows and grows and grows. So think about how you can design any software thing that you may create for your business and for your market to be viral. And of course, you may think of some great ideas or some great concepts that don't have to do specifically with your market. We've talked about before in this course how to go one set up from your market, you know, using the example of if you're in the gardening niche and that's your business, selling gardening tools. But if you can't get penetration into the market to reach the full market, then you may have to go up to see what the market is above it, which would be like home improvement. You know, above that would just be lifestyle in general. But if you're working on these ideas and you want to create software and you find yourself where you have to go up a level, you may start stumbling into some really good opportunities to create maybe some even just mass market services like Facebook's and, you know, these Twitter apps and these other things. And who knows, you may end up getting rich from it. But the point is to try to think about this, at least to how it applies to your market. And the other additional opportunities, you may create something for your market that really may take off and go crazy, and then you could apply it to other markets, license it to others to use, or open it up and just launch it for other markets. There's just a lot you can do with it. But think about how you might be able to make yours viral. And again, think about how people can get their friends involved to use it to where the service is better if their friends are in it. If you can get that one done for your project, if you can solve that problem, you're set up to make it a home run. But think about how to make it viral. The great thing about widgets and software and creating this stuff to generate traffic is that the costs, not always, but most of the time, can be very inexpensive. I mean, you have to have it hosted on a server somewhere, or you at least have to have a server for people to download the software from if it's going to be some kind of a downloadable application. But having software developed is a lot cheaper than most people realize. You can have simple scripts made that'll be for simple web services for a few $100s. You can have some pretty advanced software applications that someone would download and install on their actual computer that would do something for even $2,000. And depending on the scale of what you're trying to do and how many servers it may need or how just vast the concept is, if you're trying to build a Facebook or a Twitter, or you're trying to do something really, really extreme and complex, then you're going to get into thousands and thousands of dollars. But still, some of that stuff can even be developed for $5,000 or $10,000. So it's not like you have to spend $1 million, to create some kind of service. I doubt any of the services that you see online today that are just massive, there was more, where they spent more than probably $20,000 initially to develop the beta version of the service. Obviously, it's different if someone hired a whole bunch of people and they had venture capital and they brought in all these engineers to design a beta application of some sort. But that's a different situation. But in most cases, when it's one person with an idea and they outsource to a software developer to create something, they're not really spending a lot of money to create the first version of their idea just to see if it will fly, and you don't have to either. And because the costs are pretty inexpensive, not only for development but also for maintenance, unless you develop some kind of YouTube service where you're dealing with video files, hosting people's video files for free, which is going to really eat up bandwidth, and that's going to have a high cost. In most cases, because the costs are pretty inexpensive, when it's broken down into the cost per visitor that it's going to take or that's going to cost to bring traffic to your website, it's one hell of a bargain, basically. It's going to come down to fractions of a cent. If your software does anything and becomes viral at all, you can end up generating hundreds, if not thousands, of leads to your business for less than a penny a piece when it all breaks down to how much you spent to have the thing developed. So keep that in mind. It's actually very inexpensive, and another reason you want to think about doing this. Now, there are many types of software. I've already mentioned a few of these, but here are a few others that you may or may not know of. Toolbars, I mentioned StumbleUpon has that toolbar. Google has one. You can have your own toolbar if you want. We're going to talk about that on the CD. You can have a toolbar for cat owners. And there's a lot of this type of stuff out there in the internet. And, it's not being used by millions and millions of people. It may only be used by hundreds or thousands of people. But that can still bring a lot of traffic to your site and give a lot of value to your prospects and your people. Widgets. We've talked about widgets, little software apps that can be added to a web page, that run from another server where the data is being pulled or the activity is being pulled from somewhere else. Social networking applications. If you've used Facebook now, or MySpace, you're seeing a lot of these social networking applications. Facebook, we've talked about, has their own platform. You can develop or pay someone to develop an application that runs on Facebook. I'm sure you've seen all these little Facebook apps that are on there, and we've talked about some of them already. Web services, we've talked about this. Web services is kind of just a general term for anything that's web-based, but that would be things like Twitter, Facebook, MySpace. Those are technically web services, but also what I already kind of talked about, like a weight loss tracker where someone gets a free account and they go and they log in with the username and password, and then that thing does something, and it's web-based. It's not software they download and put on their computer. That's a web service. Badges, these are little things that people have given out, like little badges or awards that people put on their site. Some of them can have some kind of functionality where they'll show like hits. Like a great example is the kind of FeedBurner number of RSS subscribers. A little badge, people put that on their site, shows how many current subscribers they have, and it's kind of a live number that pulls from FeedBurner site. But another type of badge is also like an award. There have been many sites out there that give these little awards, these little kind of, you have the best design award for a dog site. And they give those out. Of course, those awards typically carry HTML that links to the site that shows all the different awards. And a lot of people don't care. They'll put these little awards on their site, and they're proud of them. But what usually happens with those types of things, it's kind of sneaky. I think the first person that ever started this idea was a genius, because it's obvious that who benefits the most from those little awards are the person that created the awards in the first place, because most of the awards link back to the site that gave out the awards. And as they just give out more and more awards, people have them running on their pages at all time. They put them on there and forget about them. And those awards typically link to the main award site, and that just brings that site tons and tons of traffic. So there's the opportunity for you to do things like that, and we'll talk about that on the CD. Mobile applications. These are becoming more and more popular, and they'll become more and more powerful as traffic-generating tools in the very short term. The iPhone, already has its own platform and its own SDK for developing applications specific for the iPhone. Google's working on this thing called Android, which is applications for mobile phones. So we're going to see a lot more mobile apps. You get another type of software that can have to do with bringing people to your websites. Mashups. Mashups are essentially when you can use these little APIs, which are these little plug-and-play gateways that tap into other existing software services to use their data and data from other services to kind of mash them all up. If you almost think of like making a salad, pouring all these items in a bowl and mixing it all up and making some new type of software. You've probably seen it with Twitter a little bit and Facebook and some others where people tap into like an API and they pull data and they create like a new version of Twitter. We've seen this with kind of desktop apps like Twirl and some of these other things. And by the way, there'll be links to all kinds of examples to all of these in the resources section. So just go and visit there and you'll see all kinds of examples to that, and we'll keep adding them and updating them. And if you know of any that we haven't listed, feel free to submit them and we'll add them. But mashups are getting popular because it's an easy way to create kind of a new resource or software tool by just using other people's web services and software tools. You're not even creating anything unique, so to speak, where you're doing sophisticated coding from scratch. You're just tapping into all the coding and all the communities of other services, and you're making your own unique little thing. And I'll show you some examples in a moment. Shareware, downloadable software. This is typically what people think about when they think of software. You either think of shareware, obviously, or you think of software you buy at the computer store like Microsoft Office or anything you install on your computer. But shareware has been around for, 20 or 30 years. It's essentially a software program that's downloaded, installed on a computer. It's given away and shared with others. That's why they call it shareware. And then they just ask for like a donation if you like the software. But you can create shareware that's not for sale. It's just a program that you have someone create for you, and you just give it away. Someone installs on their computer, and then, of course, it serves some purpose running on the computer. And it doesn't ask for donation or anything. And you can create this type of program, and it can help generate traffic to your website. Number of different ways. The software application itself can contain links that go right to different websites that you have or different areas of your websites. You can force a free registration on anyone that wants to use the software where it's free, but they just need to register for the software. And, of course, this is a way to build like an opt-in to get a prospect. So imagine just creating some kind of really cool weight loss tracker like we talked about that was web-based. You could also do one that's shareware and make it really, really nice interface, good graphics, has different charts and things, but it actually runs on someone else's computer. And for this example, actually, it makes a lot of sense because maybe someone's kind of shy and they don't want to, or they just want their privacy and they don't want to be putting in their weight every day in some web-based service where someone can see how much they weigh. So they'd feel better about it if it was just software on their own computer that no one else had access to that information, and they could just track it on their own computer. So that's just a great example for something that would probably make a lot more sense as a downloadable program. But then, of course, for them to use it, they have to initially register it. Like a little pop-up screen can come up on the software, and they can just put in their information and kind of opt into your registration list. And now, as people are giving this shareware program away, and we'll talk about a few ways on how to get it distributed, as people give it away, it's getting passed all over the world, and every time somebody gets it from someone and goes to put it on their computer, they have to register it with you. Very, very powerful. There have been many types of shareware programs like this that have been given away all over the world that have ended up generating millions of dollars in paid business for related services and paid software for a lot of different companies. Many software companies, a lot of smaller independent software companies, not like the Apples and Microsofts of the world, but some of the smaller ones, have built successful companies off the foundation of giving away free software like this and having it just passed around all over the world. So something else for you to think about. And there are several other types of software, and we're going to talk about all those, but software is an amazing world, and it can really bring your business a lot of traffic. In my own businesses in several different markets, ranging from people selling all kinds of stuff on eBay, everything you can think of, to helping people get more advertising for a website or for exchanging content on a blog, to all kinds of stuff. We've been very involved. I have for, 15 years plus now, creating all kinds of software programs for the internet. I created one of the first autoresponder services in 1994. I created a free image hosting service for eBay users starting around 1997. It's called myitem.com, and it's no longer business now because eBay pretty much hosts images for free right in their service. But back when they started, people had to host their photos somewhere else, and so I had the idea of building this little web-based service to host their photos, and paid like $300 to have it made, and people would put the code in their ad, their listing, and it would load the photo from our server and have a link that said, click here to get free image hosting for your ad or for your photos. And it just grew virally. As more people used it, more people saw the exposure to the service, got exposure to the service, and it just grew and grew and grew. And that service probably made me a few $1 million ultimately. And it's just the power of software. And so think about and constantly be thinking about, as you continue to grow your traffic and do things through buying advertising and, of course, putting out your content, constantly think of ways that you can add software to your business. Again, I can't stress how powerful it is and how beneficial it can be, because a lot of these things you can just create, set up, and they just run on their own. You, of course, want to maintain it, but you want to just keep that in mind, that it's not something that you're going to have to keep recreating all the time. You can get benefit from it for years and years and years. And we have with some of our little software projects. They got put online, almost forgotten about, and they still generate traffic to this day. Something else I want to mention here, it's very, very powerful, is when you create these software programs that are going to get passed around or used as a service, or anything that has anything viral in it at all, even just with a tell a friend function or anything, the power is having distribution, and that's something you keep hearing about throughout this course. You know, we've kind of talked briefly about using these communication tools like Twitter and your email list and the RSS feeds and all this other stuff through social networks to get a message out to your circles of distribution. You know, when you post new content, you have a new product coming out and all these things. Well, no matter how big or how small that distribution is, you have a major advantage of having any distribution at all when you go to launch one of these web services or one of these web-based applications, because you jumpstart it with your current audience. Now, if you're starting from zero and you have no reach at all yet, no email list, no friends on Facebook, you know, no one following you on Twitter, no distribution, then it's going to be a lot harder. But once you get up to pace and you start getting any at all, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, and you have an ability to reach people, you can leverage that to get more traffic. That's the beauty of traffic. You can use traffic to get more traffic to get more traffic. It's just a snowball effect. So keep that in mind. You can launch any of these services just reaching out through your existing customers and your existing audience and have it jump-started, and it'll grow a lot faster than it would if you started with one or two people. So just want you to keep that in mind. Let's talk now about a few tips for software development. This is important stuff. It all starts with specifications, or spec sheet as it's called. When you want to have someone create software for you, and we're going to talk all about how to design and the design of the software itself, where you can find someone on any of these freelance types of sites. Some of the ones I'm going to discuss in the CD for finding programmers, you can also find designers there. So when you find a good designer, think about having them design what the software is going to look like. Every single page of the web service, every single area of the user interface, on what the widget looks like, and even a dummy version of it as if it were working and live. Have the design created and the prototype created even without it working at all. They're just still images. They're not working web pages or working pieces of software. If you do that, you'll save yourself so much time as well as the programmer. You just give them the designs and the specs. You still have to give them specs about what it all does, but that will be a major, major shortcut in your cost as well as in your time. So it all starts with the specs. The more you can detail for them, the better. Test programmers with smaller projects first. When you're looking with what's called LAMP, which stands for, I think it stands for anyway, I think it's Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Linux is one of the most popular web servers that's used on the internet, one of the most popular, operating systems that run servers on the internet. And then Apache is the web server. MySQL is the most common database, and PHP is the most common scripting language to work on those servers. Well, most programmers doing web-based stuff will do it in those technologies. Others will do in Java, others will do .NET. So there's a broad range of things. But the point is, find multiple programmers that work in the same technology that your web service works in, or that your shareware downloadable, installable application works in, and always have backup. God forbid your main programmer gets, sick and goes in the hospital or gets killed in a car accident or anything else, and then they're the only one that worked on it, and you don't have a relationship with someone else, and meanwhile your website or your software service is down, and you're just sitting there, and your users are getting upset because they were using it every day, and you had thousands of people using it. So you need to have backup programmers. And of course, one of the other important things I forgot to mention here, at least on a little bullet here in this presentation, is that you always want to get detailed documentation on anything you have someone create. Get detailed documentation. In other words, where the code is documented, where whatever they create this documentation document that explains all the moving parts in the code that they created and how it all works. So any other reasonable programmer can pick up the documentation and immediately know how the application works, then go in and fix problems or make modifications, changes, or additions without just spending weeks and weeks and weeks just trying to figure out code as if it's like in Chinese. So having documentation is very, very important. Of course, any programmer worth their salt will create and include documentation for you. But work with multiple programmers, even if you're not going to have much work for some of them. It's always good to have a working relationship, a friendship even, with other programmers that you can call on in case of an emergency or in case you just have some work that you need done right away. And of course, test your software before you actually put it out there. Otherwise, you can run into all kinds of problems. The worst thing that happened to you is that you have a great idea that people love. They start using it like crazy and telling their friends, and then it just crashes because of a common thing that you could have fixed if you would have done thorough testing. And believe me, we've had that problem many times with a lot of things that we've developed. We've learned our lesson. And you can't always cut off potential problems. because a lot of times if things get very popular, you had no way to test on those levels with thousands of people. But typically, you can find a lot of bugs and problems if you just do thorough testing. Get some friends to test it out, give you their feedback on it before you kind of open up to the public. But always test before you put it out there. Don't just rush it to market just to get it out there for the sake of getting it out there. Of course, request feedback from people using your software or service. They're the ones that will tell you what will make it better. And of course, now you can't always go and change it and add all the features that everyone possibly asks for. One of the best and most successful software companies on the internet is a company that created the Basecamp software. And I will put links to that company in the resources section. But this company is very, very smart. Most of their web-based services, and they're subscription-based, that's their business model, actually sell them. What they do is they kind of create services that are just basic and simple to use, that don't have a lot of features, that don't confuse people, and it's just easy to use. They know that their services can be better and more powerful, but the success of what they have created is in its simplicity. And it's a lot like Twitter. A lot of people say, Twitter could have all these other features and do all this other crazy stuff, and it would be better. Well, not necessarily better. What makes it popular is just because it's so simple. It's easy to use, it's basic, and it only has a few features, and that's it. It's simple. So you always want to request feedback from users and listen to their suggestions. But you also want to keep in mind that you don't want to make your thing way too complex to where people won't use it because it's just too hard to figure out. So it's a fine line that you're going to have to balance. But listen to your users. Last but not least, when you find an all-star, try to hire them full-time. When you're using different software developers, and you can find some great software developers, for $5 or $10 an hour in other countries, if you're in the U.S., in other countries around the world, for a lot less than you could find someone in the United States, and they'll do just as good of a job, and sometimes even better. Well, when you find somebody that's just awesome, someone that does great work, they work fast, you enjoy working with them, they seem to have a good attitude, you just like working with them, they make progress quickly, they're a real asset to your business, see about hiring them full-time. Many programmers can be hired full-time for $1,500 to $2,500 a month. So for $1,500 a month, you could have someone working for you full-time where they essentially kind of agree to be working 40 hours a week for you and for that set rate. And it's great because then you kind of lock them up, and by giving them that steady work, they don't have to go out there and fight for all these other freelance jobs, and they can just, they're going to feel better about their own lives because they know the steady money is coming in, and that's a lot better than having great months and then not getting paid for 6 months at a time because they don't have any work. So, and it'll be better for you because you'll have someone great that's locked up. And if you had an idea and you went back to someone that's great that you used before, well, they may be busy with other projects and can't do your work for many, many months. So when you find a great person that you're outsourcing to, and this goes for outsourcing in general, whether it's research or writing or anything else that you'd outsource on a project basis, if you find someone that's just incredibly fantastic, and especially if they have a pretty inexpensive rate, something that's very cost-effective for you, and if you can afford it in your business or your business gets to that point of growth, try to lock them up full-time because it'll really, really pay dividends. So always keep that in mind. If you find an all-star type of freelancer, try to find a way to hire them full-time.